Andrew Brandt, former front office guy with the Eagles and Packers, now MMQB. This is where you can check out his work. It's really good stuff, so make sure you check him out at Andrew Brandt on Twitter. Andrew, welcome back to the show. How you been?
I've been well. Good to be with you guys.
It's been a while, and typically, the last couple of years, we've been talking now about what the Eagles need to do, how to fix things, and it seems that, maybe the unfortunate injury here, but it seems that they have this team kind of built for the long haul finally.
Yeah, I mean, Howie's done a good job, and I was critical a year and a half ago when they had so many resources allocated to quarterback with what they paid for Sam and what they paid for Chase, and then they moved heaven and earth to get in position to take Carson. And then, of course, it's all worked out. The Teddy Bridgewater injury was manna from heaven in a terrible way for him, but great for the Eagles, where they picked up a first-round pick, offloaded that contract, and, of course, Carson has become what he has. So the future looks bright. You know, I sort of liken it to my time early in Green Bay where we had Aaron. And, yes, we had to fill in around him, but it's the most comforting feeling that management can have, knowing that you've got the guy to lead you for the future.
Right. I mean, you look at all these teams. You look at Green Bay this year. With Aaron Rodgers, many people might think that they were the favorite, right there with Philly, right there with Minnesota. You take him off, it wasn't a playoff team. It's amazing to see how important the one guy is, and I guess the Eagles are feeling that. They go from being potentially a touchdown favorite at home to being an underdog in their own building.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Vegas guys, right? I happened to be out there speaking when it happened to Aaron, and they told me, and we're talking Vegas, that he was worth 10 to 11 points. So Carson Wentz may be similar to that. I mean, if you talk about a 3-point underdog this weekend, maybe they were a 7-point favorite with him. So that may be a 10-point swing as well. So that's how valuable these are. And no matter what happens this weekend, we're going to be sitting here in August saying Packers and Eagles, because of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at the quarterbacks that are playing this weekend, I think there's 4 on one side, and there's clearly 4 on the other. You got Brady, Breeze, Big Ben, and Ryan. You got Mariota, Bortles, Keenum, and Foles. I mean, I think the 4 on the left feel a lot better than the 4 on the right. Now, Minnesota has that defense, so they feel a little different. But there's a big disparity in the quarterbacks in this round.
Yeah, there is, and I'm being a bit of a homer here, but I'd put the Eagles in the category of Minnesota because they have such a good defense and such a good offensive line. Listen, I'm not, I don't want to make all these predictions, but I think there's a little bit of woe is me about the Eagles that is not necessary. I mean, it's a good team if they can manage the quarterback the way without him having to win the game. I think they can, and I think their O-line and running game is going to be key.
Well, I'm glad that you kind of led me down that road because we were talking about this before you came on, that the Eagles kind of feel slighted because they're saying, look, we've got, multiple guys on offense. There's not a star on any position, but it's essentially they look at it like you're telling us we're just a quarterback-driven team and not a full team, kind of different from Green Bay, that the quarterback means so much there. So when you look at the Eagles' full roster, is this a playoff roster and not just a quarterback-driven team?
I think it is. Again, the old adage about the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You can't pick one of those receivers or one of those running backs and say, yeah, surefire Pro Bowler. You can't, you can do that with Lane Johnson. You can do that with Fletcher Cox. But they have managed to build a nice team with different ways, with free agents. Some of those free agents, they sort of took a chance on a one-year deal, like a Torrey Smith and Alshon, who's not now re-signed. And then, of course, building through the draft. And then, of course, the trade with Darby. So they've done it in different ways. In Green Bay, we were primarily draft and develop. Here, they do it a lot of different ways and got a nice team. Again, you look for the future. It seems like they're going to be there. Not a lot of contracts up. But, you get back to Carson's health is always going to be the key.
Andrew, going back to how this team was actually built now, it has a lot to do with Howie Roseman, how he's able to navigate the salary cap, the players he's helped bring in. The VP, Joe Douglas, has done a lot of work with the Eagles this season. I mean, Howie has not won a playoff game as the GM of this football team. What exactly is your critique of Howie Roseman and how him and Joe Douglas have been able to build this football team? And do you think there's a possibility this team could have a sustained period of success in the next few years, especially with Wentz at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, sustained success requires young players that are really ascending. And obviously, if you have that at quarterback, your half the battle is done. Do they have those other ascending young players? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think having a Jai under contract for minimum next year is big. I think Aguilar's ascending. You have some young players on defense you can get excited about. So I just think it continues to build. And, you know, the more they can sort of do the bargain shopping relatively for the Jeffries and then decide to pay big money after they've acclimated to the culture, you know, I think that's better. As I said, Howie and I have known each other forever. Howie lives down the street from me. We see each other socially. And I had some tense conversations with him last year because I said, you cannot use all those resources at one position. And it turned out golden. It turned out golden because what he told me happened. He said, you know what? We can get through this year with Sam, and we can get a draft pick for him next year. Now, he was talking about the next year. And Chase is a comfort for Doug, and then we're going to have Carson at a $6 million average when quarterbacks like him make $20 a year. And that has happened.
Do you think Howie's kind of doing things outside the box, or is he just, you know, I mean, how do you exactly describe Howie Roseman's way of doing things with the NFL? Obviously, he's a salary cap whiz, but the way, as you just described, the way he tries to manage the roster, and, you know, put all his eggs in one basket, so to speak. I mean, is he kind of a whiz? Is he kind of doing things outside the box that other GMs normally wouldn't?
Well, again, you talk about different types of GMs that come from the scouting background, most of them. He comes from the cap and contract background. I think that negotiation background has really helped him on some of these deal-making he's done. I keep going back to Wentz, getting in position with the Miami trade to get to number 2, getting the Ajayi trade this year, and the big negotiation to get a 1 for Sam Bradford. You know, your sort of traditional scouting GM might not have that ability, might not have that savvy to squeeze out a 1. You know, if I'm the Vikings and I know that Sam Bradford's extraneous in Philadelphia, I'm not offering a 1. Mm-hmm. But they were desperate. And he took advantage of that. So that's when these kind of negotiator-type GMs, that's the value they can bring.
Andrew Brandt spent some time in the Eagles front office, the Packers front office, MMQB right now. Do you think the one thing with Howie, you know, he had the job, then he got kind of, you know, thrown down the boiler room for a couple of years. He comes back. Did he take what he was deficient in and learn from that? You know, did he allow Joe Douglas to maybe be more of a talent evaluator, where in the past maybe he felt like, no, you got to go with my pick? I mean, has he evolved noticeably?
Yeah, it's hard to sort of put generalities there. I think to some extent, you know, I think when Chip pushed him away from stuff, he used the time to sort of really study leadership. And I know he's going to a bunch of conferences, and he came and spoke to my group at Villanova a couple times and really used it as a way to sort of focus in on big picture stuff, and I think that's been helpful. Having that lieutenant as the personnel guy like he has Joe is really a key thing, because he may have his own opinions on players, but to get that dyed-in-the-wool scouting guy, because, you know, listen, Howie does scout. People sort of label him as a cap contract guy. He looks at film all the time, but I think perception-wise, it's always good to have the guy who is the dyed-in-the-wool scouting evaluator type by his side.
We know you got to get running here, Andrew. Real quick before we let you roll, the Eagles taking on this Falcons team, a team that's experienced. They went to the Super Bowl last year. If you're working with the Eagles right now, was this the matchup that was the best for them?
I think so. I mean, you can argue Carolina. No one seems to be arguing that they wanted the Saints, but I think so because, never discount the wear and tear of a West Coast trip too, and they seem light on the D line. So we'll see. I mean, this is, if it's really something that when it happened to Carson, I thought to my days with the Packers where we had the team to win it all, and the thing happened here in Philadelphia, the 4th and 26 play. And you only have so many of those chances where you feel like you got the team. And I think they had the team. Whether they have it still, and they're going to have to rally around because the position obviously is not the same.
Andrew Brandt, at Andrew Brandt on Twitter, MMQB. Check him out there. Also listen to the Business of Sports podcast. Really good stuff. Andrew, we always appreciate the time.
Likewise, guys. Take care.